Hey all, we're back here talking to the Void once more, and we've got an interesting one to talk about today. Well, I pulled this one up on streaming, so I don't have a DVD case to be brandishing at you guys this time, but I think we'll be okay without that. So this time we went a little bit further back and took a look at the 1983 slasher film Sleepaway Camp. Now, Sleepaway Camp is a fairly infamous movie, and it's spawned several sequels, so the fact that it has taken me this long to get to it is a bit surprising. But there's a lot going on in this movie for something that doesn't have a lot going on in it. So it's, thank you, Cat, hard to go into. So, yes, hi, Cat. You good? You done? Thank you. So, like I was saying, plot-wise, there's really not a lot to this movie, but at the same time, there's a lot to this movie. Anyway, so basic premise, there's about umpteen years before the plot begins, young Angela is involved in a boating accident which kills her, then her father and her brother. In which case she's taken in by her aunt, and flash forward, I don't know, 5, 7 years to when she's preteen, I think, and she's going to sleepaway camp. And as she's been kind of traumatized by this incident, she's shy, she doesn't talk a lot. Her cousin's doing all he can to try to keep her safe and look after her. And, well, shit happens. From there, anyone who seems to be bullying her gets brutally murdered, and she's just trying to seemingly have a nice summer romance with a boy she met there, and death swirls around the whole incident. Okay, very, very basic, very bread and butter slasher film, I guess. This one seems to draw heavily from Friday the 13th. But I will say, unlike Friday the 13th, and this is giving Friday the 13th a little more credit than it might even deserve. This film has absolutely no suspenseful atmosphere at all. But on the other hand, the death scenes and the gore effects are actually really good. Like, above Friday the 13th in that regard, I'd say. They were gruesome and inventive, but they come with zero buildup and, well, just sort of out of nowhere in some instances. So I will give it some points there, but at the same time, it's not really a scary movie. It's not even a suspenseful film. It's just hypnotic in a way. And I think part of that comes from the acting because holy shit. Not good acting, but you can't look away from it. And I don't know if they're trying for this, but half the performances could have been out of a comedy. But there's nothing funny about the movie except for a couple performances. It is weird. I think the best. Thank you, Kat. The best example of that would be the mother who I don't know what sort of direction she was given, but I want to see more of her. I'd watch a whole movie about this woman who's just so over the top, just the way she talks. Like, she's almost like a sort of prim proper, but at the top of her lungs, wide-eyed, oh, this is how it is. Of course it is, but maybe it isn't. It was strange, but she's barely in it, but I wanted more of this woman. And that's not the only weird performance. There are plenty of them. From the over-the-top pedophilic cook to the kitchen staff who's wears such a shit-eating grin through it, and the camp counselor who's sure one of the kids is the killer, and so he just beats the hell out of him. this is a weird movie. It is regarded as a bit of a classic in the slasher genre, and it was a box office hit as it made like triple to three times its budget, I believe. Triple to three times, triple to four times its budget. But overall, I can't say it was a good film, or even that entertaining of a film, but it was just something to just stare at. You can't look away. Okay. There is something I need to address with the ending. And I do try to avoid spoilers on this show, and I will continue to do that. Now, the ending for this movie was spoiled for me a long time ago, and anyone who's heard of Sleepaway Camp probably knows what it is. It has not aged well. It really has not. And is pretty unnecessary. It does add an interesting twist, but an unneeded one, and the movie could have really existed without it. It didn't really add anything other than a bit of a try to be a shock scene. But I will say the one thing that did help it was the effects. Now, the effects are not as good in this scene, but how unsettling they are does add something. It makes it for a very haunting final couple images, but the subject matter is in kind of poor taste, and the movie does get docked some points for that. It 80s and early 80s, so it has not aged well in that regard. So, a little bit of a warning for anyone going in there. Okay, we'll just spoiler warning for this one. This movie does get a bit transphobic towards the end. I mean, I don't think it's trying to be hateful in what it's doing, but it's more just going for a gotcha twist, and I can see how it might have worked back then, but it definitely doesn't really work right here in this day and age. I think the sequels continue on in that regard, but they actually try to go into it a little bit more, but I don't think it still helps. But I can't really speak to those. Haven't seen anything about them yet. I might look at them in the future. Yeah. So, this film is a very hard one to rate on my scale. I mean, the gore effects are high rating, but the atmosphere is pretty low. And the acting made it a relatively enjoyable watch. Like I said, I couldn't look away. And that's from like 50-60% of the performances in this thing. But quality-wise, overall, despite it being a classic, I'd have to only give this one a 2 MacGuffins. I might not be opposed to seeing it again just for some of the performances, but it's not quite enough to get it up to mediocrity, so this one is going to be lacking. And that's partially because of how poorly it has aged and the lack of any real feeling throughout the film, as amusing as the film was at points. Okay, I think that's it on this one. Take care.